Hi, I'm Cy Rogers, and I'm here to share my thoughts with you about some of the sexual struggles and the good news related to that in God's family. We're going to take a look today at one more area of struggle so common in God's family, and that's the issue of sexual addiction. Now, a lot of people have struggles with sexuality. Internet porn, things like masturbation, that doesn't necessarily mean addiction. When I think of an addict, though, I do think of someone, whether they're an alcoholic or a substance abuser or even someone misbehaving sexually. When you're out of control and the appetite controls you, you don't control it, then that becomes an area of heightened concern. And so there are many people who've cultivated a natural sexual appetite to an unnatural level, where when it should have been, an appetite about that big, it's now grown to something about that big, and it puts pressure and begins to control a person's life, dominating their activities, their thoughts, their relationships. Then we're moving into that arena of greater concern. So when I think of an addict, I think of someone, as mentioned, they're not only out of control, even though they know what they're doing is wrong or destructive, they don't stop. And then, secondly, they're taking enormous risks. Who doesn't know today about sexually transmitted disease? And yet, in spite of all this good education widely available, people don't stop, but persist in taking risks. And so even though it could lead to not only immoral behavior and illegal behavior, it could result in shame in community or disruption of a marriage. It can result in big consequences, and yet people persist. And especially in the internet age, where you don't have to go looking for it. It comes looking for you. You turn the channel, you turn online, and there's something there waiting to slime you. Many people find themselves in a ditch today, and you've dug it pretty deep, and maybe you can't climb out on your own. Well, there's good news for you. We serve a God who knows how to free you from your slavery. In fact, a friend of mine who is a therapist in Los Angeles, her name is Jan Frank, she works with people who suffer with impulse problems. And when I asked her, what would you have me say to people in a nutshell if they're struggling with something like these sexual appetites that seem out of control? She said, tell them to get some accountability. They need to bring their darkness into the light. A counselor friend of mine once said, don't keep that secret with Satan. To be sure, it's a risk to open up and tell the truth about yourself, but I suppose it's a risk if you don't. So I can't tell you what to do. I don't know what the consequences might be faced. But surely, for the many people I know who've gone off into that ditch and they find themselves struggling there, even exposed in a scandal that made headlines in community, they generally wish they had opened up and told someone sooner rather than having it told on them later. So my encouragement is that you find professional assistance, especially with those who know about how the brain works, how these problems can be addressed. Not every counselor or pastor is trained to understand the issue of sexual addiction. But it is also true that every year thousands of men and women climb out of the ditch of sexual addiction. Just like other kinds of substance abuse can be conquered, this kind of abuse can too. Abusing yourself, it doesn't just mean you have to take alcohol too much or take some other kind of chemical like, crack or heroin. Whenever a person is sexually active, powerful chemicals are released in the brain that create patterns, and the more you reinforce those patterns, the more controlling they become. So it's really an internal problem that is biochemical in nature, not just moral and spiritual. So you need an informed counselor who understands this phenomenon, who can help you attend to that.